the words pierced through me like shards of glass. My daughter's voice, sharp and dismissive, echoed across the dining room, drowning out the clinking of cutlery and the quiet hum of the ceiling fan. I froze in my chair, my hands trembling on the tablecloth, wondering how the little girl I had carried in my arms, nursed through fevers, and prayed for every single night had grown into a woman who could so easily belittle me. I pushed my chair back slowly, not out of anger, but to hold myself together before the tears slipped through. The room felt smaller, colder, as though her words had sucked the warmth out of it. For a moment, I wanted to walk away. For years, I had swallowed my hurt whenever she chose her in-laws over me. Whenever she dismissed my sacrifices, whenever she looked at me not as a mother but as someone merely taking up space in her life. But this time, her words dug too deep to ignore. I stood up, forcing my shoulders straight even though my heart felt heavy. She was 25 now, married for a year, and it was clear where her loyalties lay. Her husband's mother, elegant, confident, and wealthy, had become her guide, her real role model, as she once said in passing. I had stayed quiet then, but I remembered how it stung, how it made me feel invisible. When she repeated it tonight. "You're not half the woman my mother-in-law is." I knew it wasn't just comparison. It was rejection. I took a deep breath and looked at her across the table. "Do you really believe that?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with sorrow. She crossed her arms, her eyes defiant. "Yes, Mom. She supports me, she understands me, she gives me everything I need. You've always been difficult, always reminding me of struggles, of sacrifices. She makes life easier. You never did." Her words sliced me open, but I didn't break. Instead, I remembered the years she was too young to recall. The nights I stayed awake sewing clothes for her because I couldn't afford new ones. The mornings I skipped breakfast so she could have a full lunchbox. The endless hours at 2 jobs just to keep her in school. "You think she gives you everything," I whispered. "But I gave you everything I had. My strength, my time, my dreams. I gave up who I could have been so you could become who you are today." For the first time that evening, her eyes flickered, not with anger but with something else. Unease. Maybe even guilt. Still, pride kept her silent. I sat down again, folding my hands in front of me. "You may see her as more polished, more accomplished, but don't mistake appearances for love. She entered your life when you were already grown. I was there when you couldn't tie your shoes, when you cried because the other kids laughed at you, when you thought you'd never get into college. Do you think she would have held your hair back while you threw up from the flu at 3 a.m.? Because I did." The silence between us thickened. She shifted in her seat, but I kept going. "I am not perfect. I made mistakes. Maybe I was too strict at times, maybe I didn't always know how to give you the softness you wanted. But every decision I made was to protect you. Even if you couldn't see it." My voice cracked, and finally, the tears I'd held back spilled down my cheeks. "I never wanted to be compared. I just wanted to be your mother. And for that to be enough." Her eyes widened. For the first time, her hardened expression softened. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if struggling with the weight of her own words. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she whispered, "Mom, I didn't mean it like that." But she did. We both knew she did. What mattered now was whether she meant to keep believing it. I reached for my bag and stood. "I think I should go," I said gently. "I love you, and I always will. But I won't sit here and let my worth be erased because you've forgotten where you came from." As I turned toward the door, I heard her chair scrape against the floor. "Mom, wait," she called, her voice trembling. I paused but didn't turn around. For the first time, she sounded like the little girl I used to know, not the woman hardened by comparison and pride. "Mom, I'm sorry." Her words hung in the air, fragile but real. I closed my eyes, letting them sink into my soul. Slowly, I turned back. She stood there, her eyes wet, her arms half raised as though torn between reaching for me and staying frozen in shame. That night didn't end with hugs and laughter. It ended with quiet tears, awkward silences and small, hesitant words of apology. Healing takes time, and broken trust doesn't mend in an instant. But it was the beginning. Over the weeks that followed, she began visiting more, calling more. The walls between us didn't collapse overnight, but brick by brick, they began to crumble. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen sharing tea, she said softly, "You were right, Mom. You gave me everything. I just didn't see it before." And in that moment, the years of pain seemed worth it. Not because I wanted recognition, but because she finally understood that motherhood isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, through storms, through sacrifices, through a love that asks for nothing in return.